he will now share his thoughts with all of us here.
Namaskara. Shruti Sukta Ruchiramala Shatashastra Sutra Mula Rishivarya Chintaneya Surabharati Suramya. The glorious language of Sanskrita is a beautiful garland of delightful sounds of Vedas. It is the source code for hundreds of scriptures and mystical sutras. It is the object of great rishis and munis for their meditation. Sanskrita is the divine and enchanting language of Bharata. This particular music, shloka, was rendered or made popular, can anybody guess? By a British citizen. Her name is Gabriella Burnell, and this is the extent and reach of Sanskrita today in the world. Good afternoon to everyone. I am very happy to be here. Dr. Raghavendra Rao, Srinivas Rao, chief guest on the stage, and the Srinivas family. I'm very, very happy that you have invited me. My apologies, I couldn't be here the initial few days because of my personal engagement. Doctors can be terribly occupied, especially more occupied when there is a function at home. But I'm very happy that I could share some time with you here today. My contact with Sanskrit is very rudimentary, at least during my formative years. In 1971, when I was in 8th standard, all my classmates used to opt for Sanskrit as a language, second language. And when they went to college in PUC in 1974, they took Sanskrit as a second language. I was curious to know why. I later came to know that Sanskrit is very easy to pass. And Sanskrit doesn't take too much of effort to learn, so that you could concentrate on your core subjects of science and mathematics and so on. That was the thinking, and that was the exposure I had. Subsequently, I joined medicine, and unfortunately today, the way medicine is taught, there is an absolute dichotomy between our culture. Our main thrust is only Western medicine. Only after you gain certain amount of experience, expertise, talk to certain learned people, like we have some of them on the stage today, you realize what a rich cultural heritage you inherited. And if you're not careful, what a rich cultural heritage you will be losing. Now everybody talks about the Vedic period. Now what is the Vedic period? The Vedic age or the Vedic period is somewhere between 2500 BC to 600 BC. So we are talking of something like 2500 years ago, when people were making implements with stone somewhere. Our people were chanting Vedic shlokas which had so much sense and meaning. We should be all very proud of this heritage of ours. There is medicine, there is Ayurveda, there is yoga. All of them have one common platform, one engine which drives all of that, and that is Sanskrita. Sanskrita is the backbone of all these particular pillars of our culture, and we should all be very, very happy about it. We have the Rig Veda, we have the Atharvana Veda, which talks so much about medicine, Ayurveda, plants, taxonomy, and so on. And we have what is called the Samhitas. I will talk of only one. There is the Charaka Samhita, there is the Sushrita Samhita, and the Vagbhatas, we have Ashtanga Hridayam. All these are compilations of various, mostly medical, based on Ayurveda. And I am fascinated by one Samhita, it is called the Sushrita Samhita, which is around 600 BC it was compiled, even before Chanakya, even before Chandragupta Maurya, and so on. As a doctor, what I found very, very intriguing is, there are 3 volumes. Those of you who are interested, especially doctors, can download it from the web. There's English translations available, and it makes for absolutely fascinating reading. Some of them require some translation, I understand, but I think it's worth the effort. There are 3 volumes, like I said. There are 184 chapters. About 1,120 diseases have been explained in detail. There is formulations for about 200 medications based on minerals, based on plants, based on animal products. And there is a description of about 750 medicinal plants which are with indications, with descriptions and so on. This is nothing but a textbook of pharmacology in 600 BC. We read pharmacology today, we have classifications today. Believe me, we had it in 600 BC. Only thing it requires is for somebody to open our minds and let us know. More fascinating is, Sushruta was known as the father of surgery. I was wondering why. The Sushruta Samhita has description of how to make an incision on the body for an operation, how to probe and how to extract a foreign body from the body, how to cauterize a wound, either chemically or thermally. These are all procedures which are used today, and the description of this has already been mentioned in his own way in the Samhita. There is also a chapter on tooth extraction. And if somebody has a collection of pus in the body, what we call an abscess, there are methods and instruments described, trocars, to drain this particular abscess. Hernia is a very common disease most people encounter. The management of hernia by surgery, there's a description of that. Caesarean section, children delivery by caesarean section has been written extensively. And I can go on and on and on. And what is the most important thing, which is even today practiced, is if somebody has a problem in the nose and the nose has to be repaired or fashioned, what we do today is we take a bit of skin from the forehead, we call it a rotational flap. We would rotate it and bring it onto the nose. And this has been described by Sushruta in his Samhita, and even today some of the surgeons referred it to as the Indian method of rotational flaps. And I think that is phenomenal. The more you read, the more you realize how much you can inherit from this vast knowledge, which we can let go if you are careless. We have talked about classifications. Today, most medical students or most students know you classify everything. Classify an automobile, classify illnesses, classify symptoms. In this particular book, the plants, animal taxonomy has been so very well explained. If you want to classify trees, trees were classified as Vanaspati, Vanaspatya. There is creepers, which was classified as Vallis, or what we call in today Balli, and so on. Therefore, you have taxonomy also in this particular Samhita, especially related to medicine. And today in any medical college, when you are teaching, if there are medical students here, they will understand. We have what is called inspection, auscultation, percussion, and so on. Sushruta had devised a system where you classify plants, for example, by texture. If a particular leaf was hairy, it was called Lomasa Vasana. If a particular leaf was soft, it was called Mrudupatra. If the particular leaf was white, it was called Shvetapatra, and obviously Raktapatra means something in red. If a surface of a leaf was a little rough and hairy, it was called Romasa Patra, and so on. I can go on. And there were also classification based on the number of leaves. Ekapatra, Dvipatra, Tripatra, and Bahupatra. So what I meant is, if you want to describe a particular plant, you have so many classifications mentioned. And I'm not talking of somebody who's written a book yesterday or the day before. This has been written about 2,500 years ago. I don't know how many of you are aware of this particular plant called the Shankha Pushpa. I was recently aware of its medicinal properties. A colleague of mine used to make an infusion of Shankha Pushpa and say it is an antioxidant and you should drink it. These are white flowers or sometimes blue flowers which grow on hedges. It's all over the place. I believe it has fantastic medical properties. And I don't know how many of you have heard of ashwagandha. Ashwagandha basically means a plant which smells like a horse. Ashwagandha. The roots of ashwagandha are supposed to be very, very useful. And I'm an oncologist. I can tell you, for about 25 years, I have used so many chemotherapy medications. One of the medications which we used is called vincristine and vinblastine. And you'll be surprised, they are got from a plant called vinca alkaloids, which many of us grow in our house. We call it the Sada Pushpa, or somebody in the north would call it Basavapada. They're very, very yellow, blue and red flowers, and they form the basis for chemotherapy in many, many cancers. So what I'm trying to say is there is a connection between medicine, between Ayurveda and modern medicine, and the common thread is Sanskrit. We should all recognize this particular fact. And as an offshoot of this, we have meditation, we have yoga, and the whole thing balances and harmonizes itself between mind, body and spirit. Thank you very much for this patient learning, patient hearing. And maybe we could, going ahead, spend about a month or two during the curriculum of modern medical education to sensitize our students about our heritage, especially in terms of Ayurveda and medication. That would be very wonderful, because that will make our education more holistic, our medical education more meaningful. Thank you very much for your attention once again. My thanks go to the organizers for having given me this opportunity to spend some time with you all. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir, for your very thought